Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue to work on the Supra and try to finish up all the wiring harness inside of the car and get rid of as much as possible of the old harness that we don't need anymore in the car. So we're starting to rip out the old wiring harness that was in the car. As you can see, it's a complete rat's nest in here. I'm going to rip out all the old connectors for the old switches because we don't need those anymore as we're going over to a touch panel. Same thing goes for the engine harness that I'm going to rip out. I'm going to re-pin a couple of connectors, make sure that we don't loop them back on themselves and back through the firewall in a different grommet. As you also can see, the power distribution panel is a complete mess and there's way too many wires going around in the car here, so there's a lot of cleaning up to do. Now we're just going to figure out what cables are going to stay and what else is going out. Cables for the electric servo, the heat exchanger are going to stay, but most of the other things are going out. So now we got the engine harness out of the car, now I'm going to figure out what cables that needs to be routed back into the main grommet. And when that's done, we're going to stuff it all back in. So now routed the output cables and the boost controller back through the bulkhead, and I'm just going to re-pin that one to a connector I have both sides of, and then the harness can go back in the car. So we got the engine harness all finished up and back in the car, not looping around into the second grommet anymore. So now it's time to move on to the next thing. So next thing up, we gotta hook up the power distribution module to the power panel. The nice thing about these things is that they only require one common input and one common ground, and you have 6 different outputs to do whatever you want. There's not enough room on the power distribution panel to fit the PDM yet, so I'm gonna remove all the relays that you can see and try to fit it. So I got the PDM mounted, and now I'm going to figure out the routing of the 6 cables, 6 outputs to all the components that is going to be powered by it. So threw the ECU back in, and tomorrow I'm going to finish up the wiring, hook up the PDM and try to power on the car, see that everything works. So to continue the wiring nest that's in the car, first of all I think I'm gonna make a plate that goes between here and inwards, sort of like a tray where I can put all the cables, so that I can zip tie them nicely and that it looks neat. Also have this connector here, which gives with the two cables that are twisted together here. That's power to the ignition coils and the ECU, and of course there's a ground to the ECU as well. And just like that, I now have a plate where I can zip tie all the cables to, so that they don't have to hang from the A-pillar all the way to the center of the car. So now I'm going to repin the underside of this one, which is right here, this thing here. I think this is made for OEM alternator and OEM wiring harness in the car, so it has all the stuff for the alternator, starter, cable and such like that. And since I was a doofus when I mounted this the first time, I broke a couple of the locking tabs for the pins inside of the not pre-terminated connector, so I gotta remake or repin that connector to match up with the new one I made. So the cables are now, or the connector is now rewired and ground is hooked up, so now it's just to hook everything up to the PDM lookalike thing and we can zoom power on the car again. So after some more thinking, I realized I need at least 2 relays to be triggered by the PDM. I need one relay for the ECU power to the coils and the race dash. Then I need a relay to power the wipers, because the PDM that I have, or what you should call it, I'm not really sure what you want to call that thing, it is only rated to 10 amps per bank, and the ECU alone can draw up to 10 amps. Then there is the coils, and then there's a race dash, and the wipers, I have no idea how much power they draw. So we're going to attach 2 of the relays again. There's a nice spot right there below the PDM to attach them. And there I can also ground the outputs from the relays, so that you have trigger on this one, and it's just grounded, and then you have fuse pad or 12 volts supply voltage into one of the 2 other pins and output again. So we've jumped about half an hour further into the video. I've finished up the wiring to the ECU, given everything power, and I'll just test, because now if I push the first button there, in theory, but the dash logger, the ECU should trigger, and possibly it should trigger the fuel pump in the back, but the fuel pump isn't connected, so it should only trigger it for a few seconds. So let's see. That's good. Fuel pump relay turned off again, and the dash logger is active now, complaining that everything is wrong. So now the only thing left to do is to hook up the rest of those wires. Now, if everything is done correctly, I should have wipers as well. Turns out I do. Two down, 3 to go. Power steering. Move this one in. I don't know if you can hear that, but probably can. There's a lot of noise in here right now. Thank you guys for watching. We've gotten a lot of stuff done on today's episode. We're almost done with the electrical. Tomorrow I'm going to start with the rear tube frame, throw it back on, and then start with the water system in the trunk. See you then.